Welcome into the PFF NFL Daily. Today, discussing some breaking news, emergency daily here. Jamar Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals has just a hip injury, Sam. I don't know what it is exactly, but he's expected, per Adam Schefter and others, to miss 4 to 6 weeks. Prime candidate for injured reserve, per sources. A huge blow to the Cincinnati Bengals, 4-3, tied atop the AFC North with the Baltimore Ravens. And we talk a lot about Jamar Chase, Sam, because he's so important to that offense. What's your instant reaction here to Jamar Chase being injured?
Yeah, injury news kind of came out of nowhere, right? I mean, he looked fine, obviously, last game, absolutely destroyed the Atlanta Falcons, particularly when A.J. Terrell went down. And now all of a sudden he's going to wind up on IR right as the Bengals season is getting itself back on track. Huge blow. We know that, the Bengals are in a pretty good spot of behind Jamar Chase. They've got T. Higgins, who's that sort of 1A type of wide receiver. They've got Tyler Boyd, who showed that he can still make a ton of plays in that game against the Falcons. But without Chase, there's a real risk that they go back to what they were exactly before they had Jamar Chase, which was those two guys, Joe Burrow, or albeit rookie Joe Burrow, and missing something, missing the number one receiver that turned this into a great receiving core. It was like, is T. Higgins really a number one guy? And Tyler Boyd's a nice slot guy, but this team's really, in need of that elite alpha receiver. And then as soon as they get him, that's what makes T. Higgins looks like a star on the other side. That's what makes Tyler Boyd look so good as the third option. That, I think, is the real worry for the Bengals this year. Chase has got 68 targets this season, T. Higgins 43, Tyler Boyd 37, and then the next wide receiver has 3. So that's another issue, is now you got to go all the way down the depth chart to find the next guy up.
Okay, so you know me, Sam, nuanced, never like to overreact. So I'm gonna try to balance this out here, right? Also, want to remind people, a lot of people have a short memory. So I want to remind people of something, but not overrate it too much. A year ago at this time, before Jamar Chase got here, Joe Burrow's deep ball numbers were terrible, right? The narrative, the Joe Burrow narrative, the reaction to Joe Burrow's rookie season, there was 2 big reactions. One, the Bengals don't have an offensive line to keep him healthy, and he got hurt, and it's all the offensive line's fault. And 2, they could not connect on anything deep. Joe Burrow had an 18% completion percentage on deep passes, 20-plus yards. He was 9 for 48 as a rookie, and we didn't overreact to that. We just said, look, Joe Burrow was throwing dimes at LSU. He was fantastic. He is not a bad deep ball thrower historically, but we know that deep stats are very much wide receiver driven. And then all of a sudden, Jamar Chase shows up. That completion percentage goes up about 30 percentage points. And now you have to respect the Bengals' deep game. I'm not saying Joe Burrow is going to regress and start completing 18% of his deep passes, but you see the impact of that number one receiver. Jamar Chase being open down the field, Joe Burrow having the confidence to throw it to him, and then the trickle down of T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. And Tyler Boyd has gone off these last couple weeks because that was the Bengals adjusting, right? Early in the year, teams were playing there too high, trying to take Chase out of the game. Tyler Boyd's owning the middle of the field now. So it's back to adjustment time for the Bengals, and teams are going to adjust back, maybe play a little bit more man coverage. There's a lot of pressure now on Burrow, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins to try to match the production that Jamar Chase is leaving.
Yeah, just to correct myself from before, the next receiver is at 7 targets, not 3. Mike Thomas, the other Michael Thomas. But yeah, look, we're not going to make any declarative statements about what is about to happen to the Bengals or Joe Burrow, whether he goes back to being the guy that he was before Jamar Chase arrived, because everybody's developed since then, right? Burrow is now in year 3, not in year 1. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, those guys have been in the offense longer. They've gotten better, particularly Higgins, given how young he was at that time. But it is concerning that we have seen a version of this offense or a version of this group that is left without Jamar Chase there, and it was missing something. It was clearly a big step down. It didn't have the same level of potency, the same level of danger that it has when Jamar Chase is there. And that's the concern for Cincinnati, is that if that is key, if Jamar Chase is the thing that drives this everything else, if he's what allows T. Higgins to be successful as a number 2, if he's what opens space for guys over the middle, if he's what allows Joe Burrow to be a good deep ball passer again, because all of a sudden he's got a legit target on the other end, that's a concern because that isn't there anymore. And we haven't seen evidence that any of the other guys left can be that, right? T. Higgins is a good receiver, but he's not that type. He is a big bodied, more of a contested catch kind of guy. He's not going to win the same way as Jamar Chase does. Same thing with Tyler Boyd. And then you look elsewhere in the depth chart for like who could step up. I mean, the other Mike Thomas, probably not. Trent Taylor, not. No. I mean, there's no alternative option sitting there on the depth chart, just like waiting for the opportunity to get to step up into that role. Like they're going to have to find a different way of getting it done.
Picture it, Sam. Your kicker's lining up for an onside kick. The chances of regaining possession are slim. The stakes are high. Tension's higher. Your pulse is racing. He kicks it, bounces up, and you're just waiting to see who's going to get it. That's it. That's what you want to feel. That same excitement with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, and their unbeatable offers. Right now, new customers can make any $5 NFL bet and get $200 in free bets if your team wins. Check it out. In addition to the usual bets, everyone can boost their winnings with DraftKings stepped up same game parlays. To make things even sweeter, you could throw down on those stepped up same game parlays once per game day all season long. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF to get $200 in free bets if your team wins. Just place a $5 bet on any football game only at DraftKings Sportsbook using the code PFF. Sam, our entire offseason narrative, mine in particular, quarterbacks with and without wide receiver one. And I think we both agree Jamar Chase absolutely fits into that bucket, right? And so far we've seen the Eagles transform into one of the best teams with A.J. Brown. The Titans losing A.J. Brown, lose some efficiency. The Raiders, kind of a wash so far with Devontae Adams. The Packers, falling apart without Devontae Adams. The Chiefs, still one of the best offenses in the NFL without Tyreek Hill. The Dolphins, one of the most efficient offenses in the NFL with Tyreek Hill, right? So we've seen all of these various changes. So all I'm saying is we get to see a little bit of that, learn a little bit more from Joe Burrow. And the thing we always bring up, does this make him a better quarterback? Does it make him better? That's where Patrick Mahomes might be taking strides, where he's not relying on Tyreek Hill as much and spreading the ball around. Can Joe Burrow? We have a scout in the house. We have scout. Can Joe Burrow take that same step where now he's going to spread the ball around, not rely on wide receiver one as much, and that makes him better in the long term?
The concern I think I have is that this season is the narrative across the league is all about supporting cast and how important that is and how important all of your wide receivers and your offensive line and your scheme is to quarterback success and to offensive success generally. And this doesn't help that. Like, this moves it in the opposite direction. It takes away one of the most potent weapons in the NFL, and it forces everybody else to try and pick up that slack. And there is no obvious sort of player to step in and try and do that. It's going to have to get spread around. It's going to have to be Higgins, Boyd, Joe Mixon, the offensive line, the scheme, and Joe Burrow all raising their level to try and be better players for a 4 to 6 week period until they get Jamar Chase left in the building. Can they do it? Possibly. Like, we know Burrow is capable of playing at an incredible level. When things are well, maybe he's capable of playing at an incredible level without Chase. But it's just harder, right? It just makes everybody's life more difficult for a team that wasn't exactly cooking even within there, right? They've had a couple of good games. They've righted the ship, but we're not looking at like the Buffalo Bills and saying, can they get by at this high level without Stephon Diggs in the lineup, say? We're looking at a team that was kind of teetering on the edge of good and not so great, and then asking them if they can step up and pick up some slack.
The one other part of the equation here is the Bengals offensive line. And we always like to make the point that receivers getting open protects the offensive line. And even for a guy like Chase, who sees so many targets down the field, they're quick targets, right? It's a lot of, get to the top of your drop, hit the deep ball, and get it out to Chase. That's the other element here, is not just the explosiveness, but the Bengals lose one more receiver who can be open on that first read. Yeah. And it puts a little bit more pressure on the pass blocking, a little bit more pressure to hold up that extra second. And they're still not one of the better offensive lines in the league when it comes to pass blocking.
Right. It's stressing a unit that was already not exactly excelling and making their life more difficult as well. So it's not just making good players' lives more difficult. It's making the struggling players' lives more difficult. This has the potential to be a really difficult period for the Cincinnati Bengals because of what they're losing and because of what everybody else is going to have to step up. Now, the good thing for them is Cleveland, which is a very winnable game, albeit a division game. Carolina, a game they should win even without him. Pittsburgh, again, a very winnable game, even if it's a division game. Tennessee, the Titans somehow are winning games, even though they don't look great, but they haven't played anybody that great for a while. So those are 4 very winnable games before they have to face the Chiefs and then back with the Browns. And it's a winnable stretch outside of that Kansas City game without Jamar Chase. So they don't have a ton of games to be able to throw away, but they could go on a run and be able to get by.
Yeah, that Chiefs game is the one you want to circle there because the early report is 4 to 6 weeks. That's week 5, right? Is there a bye in there as well? Yeah, there's a bye. So that's week 6 out of the 6. So we'll see if Jamar Chase can make it back for that big Chiefs game, AFC Championship rematch. Jamar Chase injured hip injury 4 to 6 weeks. It's the PFF NFL Daily.